Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Today it is the 26th of May, 2022. Joining us, it is Robbie Triano of SiriusXM. One simple question that Robbie asked earlier this week that has a variety of answers. Which Big 12 coaches are under the most pressure in 2022? We'll get to that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Joining us, it is Robbie Triano of SiriusXM. Robbie, this was a brilliant, simple, complicated, I'm not sure how to describe a question you asked earlier this week. Which Big 12 coaches are under the most pressure? And I'm beginning to think about this, and it's so complicated because there is no like garden variety pressure, right? It's completely circumstantial, and circumstances at every school are always different.
Yeah, and I feel like us as little content producers or creators, we have to be thinking of stuff during May and these type of months where there's not much happening. And it just made me think, like, what exactly is pressure? Because I think to some, it could be losing your job. I think that there are maybe 1 to 2 coaches in this league that may be faced with that. And then some pressure is just like you have an entire fan base that needs you to succeed, or else they're going to hate you for an entire season. So pressure can be described in a bunch of different ways, but I do think the Big 12 doesn't necessarily have that many coaches that are under extreme pressure, but there are some that are definitely under a microscope this year.
Yeah, I mean, there is extreme pressure on some of them, but not, as you mentioned, not very few of them, right? This is, you and I have my list 1 to 10, and we're going to go from most pressure to least pressure. But I think let's start at 1. It's Steve Sarkisian, right? That's who you have at number 1 for you.
Yep, that was an easy number 1, and it's clear. Even though I don't think his job is necessarily on the line, I think his reputation with his entire fan base is.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I'm somebody who thinks like we do have to give things a bit more time than we are, we do sometimes. And I think last year, like there was a cleaning out that had to happen, right? He had to kind of get the out with the old and with the new. And it didn't go very well, but also they had some moments where they were really competitive. I mean, they were winning a lot of games and were not able to finish. They've completely revamped the roster. They've gotten some help in the coaching staff. They've gotten some help, obviously on the field. But I mean, this is not like, here's the thing. This is not Texas's bad. We've had so many Texas conversations on this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I was talking last week with our friend Chris Blank's co-host Josh Helmer, and I was saying, like, look, I'm not trying to make any arguments about Texas being back, but I think Texas should win 9 to 10 games. Like, we don't have to have both, right? We don't have to do the Texas is back thing, but can't we acknowledge how much talent they have? And there's a reason why we have Sark 1. There's a lot of pressure because there's so much talent. And this team, we saw them go up in so many games last year. If they finished 2 or 3 of them, like 7-5, they didn't finish any of them. They finished the Kansas State game off. They didn't finish any of those games that we were talking about last year. And so to me, that kind of cranked up the pressure. They do need to flip a lot of those games, in my opinion, this year. That's why the pressure's up, because they have the talent to do it. And this is a different level of talent, right? This is the best running back in the country. This is one of the top 5 wide receivers in the country. This is not Sam Ehlinger or Hudson Card or Casey Thompson or Tyrone Swopes or any of those other guys. This is Quinn Ewers, who was one of the most highly sought after and highest ranked players we've seen in a while. This is a different level of talent. This isn't standard Texas talent. This is like Bama level talent. You know how we know that? They're getting some of Bama's players. So this to me is why it's so much different than our normal conversations about Texas. This isn't run-of-the-mill Sam Ehlinger, we're back. This is like, okay, top-level talent. Let's see how close you can get this thing to 10, 11 wins this year.
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of Sark's reputation is on the line because we saw what he did at Alabama, but he also had the best players ever. We saw what he did at other schools in the NFL. He had amazing talent around him. Now he finally has that. He does not like Tom Herman did not. They recruited really well, but the talent they made was not NFL level or anything like this. There is NFL level players on this team that he has, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So he has the tools that he can use here. And if things don't go right for that, it's like, Are you really the guy? Because, you sold this thing to us that you were amazing at offense and you've proved it, but now we give you the pieces to run it yourself and it's not happening. And I do think a lot of pressure's on him too because of who they have playing the quarterback, and that is Quinn Ewers. And there is so much hype and praise put into this quarterback. And if he doesn't succeed under him, it's like, well, why was everyone praising him? Everyone says he has this arm talent, something. Why can't you take it out of him? You're known as the person for doing that. So I think he really has so much pressure on him because one, it is Texas and everything is pressurized there. And two, I think like the offense and Quinn Ewers, like that has to succeed. That has to work for him. Or else I think a major bit of reputation is lost with him. And yeah, this is a real, you have to show me, because once you go 5-7, like you don't really have a lot of excuses left in the
Right.
tank.
I just think, the one thing I also want to say too, and people want to say you're making an excuse for Texas. We do have to be careful with some of this stuff. Remember how critical people were of CJ Stroud last year, early on in the year? And now where are we at? Consensus top 2 pick next year, one of the 2 Heisman favorites. And if somebody is a consensus, a guy, it's like, all right, after what we saw last year, we're pretty sure this guy's going to be one of the top 2 picks. Pretty sure this guy's going to be there in New York after already being there once. Like, there is a certain level of week-to-week patience we have to have. Quinn Ewers has not taken a college snap. So if this does go south, like I think there is a way this team looks really good in late October and November. And then that version, I'm hoping like that version of it could show up next year and really be gangbusters. So if they go 9-4, I know people will be upset, but like it depends on how that 9-4 looks. So I think 5-7 is 5-7. That's fine. Whatever last year, like that's just bad. But let's make sure we're a bit more, we evaluate how this season goes and not just look at the record at the end of the day. Because I think that's something that we do far too often. I'm not accusing you of doing this, but I think a lot of us do that. And so I'm just saying, like, let's see how Texas gets to where they get in the end of the year. But I mean, objectively speaking, not everybody's going to look like that. And that means there's a lot of pressure. Number 2, Robbie here. I was between 2 coaches, Brent Venables and Neal Brown. And I went with the guy, Texas's pressure of expectations and having a down year last year. Neal Brown is, you might lose your job expectations, right? That's where we're at with this one. So you bring in the 5-star quarterback and you bring back your offensive line. And I think people are hoping it goes a bit better. And you're bringing a new play caller. They want 8 wins. I think they want 8-4. I think they want to be in a conversation talking about, hey, West Virginia slide into that Big 12 championship in a weird year for the Big 12. That's where they want to be. Do you agree with that statement? And do you also have Neal Brown at number 2?
Yeah, Neal Brown is definitely my number 2 for this. And also, like, when it comes to the coaches in the Big 12, I don't think anyone is as hot of a seat as Neal Brown. Like, if Steve Sarkisian has a bad year, I still think he's going to be there, one, because the recruitment has been great. And also, if they get Arch Manning, I think they're going to want to keep him there. I think that is something where it's like, you know what, you're attached here. So for Neal Brown, it's
trending that direction right now. That they might, I'd say they're probably the leaders in the clubhouse for him right now.
So now when it comes to Neal Brown, it's like, okay, you've had this many years. You haven't had true success. I understand you weren't handed a great roster, but you're at the point now where every player on your team is someone you recruited or someone you got in as a transfer. I don't know if there's any people left from the Dana Holgorsen era on that team. So when it comes to Neal Brown, you have to kind of do it now. You have to do it now. So I have him as number 2 as well. I think he's the only Big 12 coach on the hot seat when it comes to this upcoming season. You could tell me that they've pushed through, that they are in the top 4 or top 5, and JT Daniels is this great guy, and he's been doing great. Or you could tell me Kansas and West Virginia are in the running for the last team in the conference. Like, this is a team I'm not really sold on because we've seen a lot of players leave there. Akeem Mesidor, we've seen, their offense. I don't know what exactly that is going to look like. So there's a lot of unknowns with this team. So when it comes to pressure, I feel like Neal Brown, especially when you hire an offensive coordinator, when you are the play caller, like that is kind of a sign like, okay, I need someone else to do this. So I love Neal Brown as a coach, but man, this is really a make or break season for Neal Brown.
And look, I like the move to bring in Graham Harrell because the one thing, Robbie, I think we could all be pretty critical of them with last year was they didn't have an offensive identity. Like besides Letty Brown, look, Letty Brown was great last year. I thought, despite everything not that offense being really inconsistent. Also, we have to acknowledge, like, while Jared Dagey was, I think, near top of the league in passing yards, it felt like a lot of empty calories. That was a team last year that went and played in a bowl game against against Minnesota and Arizona, and they looked awful in offense. And it's like, this is one of the Big 12 leaders in passing yards. They need to have an offensive identity this year. And also, they've actually been playing, I think, like relatively good defense at times throughout the course of Neal Brown's tenure. So the pressure is there, though. I mean, anytime you're an offensive mind and you take away your play calling responsibilities, that shows that, I'm not saying you're done for, but like the pressure is on, the heat is up. And so I think we're in agreement on number 2 there. Anything else on Neal Brown before we move on?
I also just want to talk about the state of like West Virginia. Like when it comes to the new Big 12 and OU and Texas leave, like where is that program really at? Because when these teams come in, I still don't see West Virginia, rising to the top. Like they've been there before, but it's been a really, really long time. And then I see a lot of other teams just in front of them: Baylor, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati. I see TCU as being a team ahead of them, Houston. Like these are programs that are just still getting more ahead of them. So it's like, what exactly is that ceiling of that program? And can you reach it with Neal Brown? And I think this is a real test to think, oh, can we actually get there with this guy? Because if not, I think they need to make a change after this year.
You have to consider, too, they're going to be bringing a coach at that point into the conference in Dana Holgorsen, who was one of the coaches they had so much success with, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you're kind of looking across the street almost in a way, being like, are we better off now than we were before? And I know that obviously things didn't end very well between those two. But, I mean, yeah, this is a program that, under Rich Rodriguez, 9 wins, 11 wins, 3 consecutive seasons back in the Big East. Dana Holgorsen had multiple 10-win seasons. And, yes, it comes and goes for them. But, like, they're not in the spot right now, it feels like, where they're close to being at, precipicing at 9-10 wins, right? Like, it's not right now. We don't feel like we're building towards a 10-win season for West Virginia, do we?
No. And I'm trying to find buyout numbers for him if it happens, and it doesn't seem like
an extension too, right? Years ago.
Yeah. So that's really tough. Also, why are we extending coaches when they don't really have real success? I think that is one of the worst investments any athletic director can make. I love Neal Brown as a coach, but why are you extending someone when they don't even have true bowl success?
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Number 3, Brent Venables, first-year coach, so it kind of makes it weird. But this type of expectation here, Robbie, this is purely brand name expectation, in my opinion, in the general sense. Oklahoma, it means something, right? Even in the year last year, we consider probably a down season for them. They won 10 games, right? We're really close. We're plays away from potentially going to the Big 12 championship game when they were playing against Oklahoma State. So you think about, all the amount of 10-win seasons this group has. 8-4 would be upsetting, would not cost him his job. I think the good thing for everybody in Oklahoma is, like, there's no, you've watched Friday Night Lights. There's no walking around telling Coach Taylor, Coach, we better be in state this year. We better be, like, there's none of that at Oklahoma. He is well aware of the expectations that surround currently this program. But I think because of the expectations, which he understands once again very fully, that puts him squarely at number 3 on this list.
Yeah, it makes sense too. And clearly, I don't think he's going to lose his job. I was kind of torn about this when we did the exercise over the week, because I didn't have him in my top 5, because in my head, I was like, if he goes 8-4, which, like, you can debate if that's going to happen or not, but if he did, I still think so many fans believe in him because of what exactly they lost and what exactly the change happened. So, like, if a first-year head coach goes 8-4, like, okay, that's fine. But for Oklahoma, it's different. And I think what majority of the pressure is, and this is purely fan-driven, is now this year is going to be a comparison of 2 teams, Oklahoma and USC. And this whole year, it's going to be, well, are they better than us? Because if USC finishes with a better record than Oklahoma, then I think a lot of fans are going to be like, what are we doing? Why? What is going on here? So I think it is an unfair race for Brent Venables to always constantly be compared to the person that he left, or that left Oklahoma, and Lincoln Riley. But I think OU fans need to feel that validation that, like, we are better than USC. We have to be better than that. And I think USC's road is honestly a little bit easier because, I mean, the Big 12 gets a lot of flack, but I do think there are good teams in this conference. I think if we just look at their schedule, I'm not going to write out Nebraska. It is at Nebraska. We can say whatever we want about that, but that's going to be a tough game. They play Texas, Baylor. They have it at home, so that's tough or good for them. And they are home at Oklahoma State, so their toughest games are at home. So that is good, but they are still very good teams. So I think there is a lot of pressure on him to succeed early. But for me, if they go 8-4, he's definitely not getting fired. I do think a lot of people left there, so I don't know why the pressure would be immense.
Yeah, I think it's, there's just so much expectation. Here's what I'll say though, that in relation to the rest of the Big 12 teams, I think they should be the favorite. I've already bet on their over under win total. It came out of Bet Online at 8.5. I think it's gone to I think it might be up at 9 now, 9.5 at some places. I broke down their schedule. I think they win at least 9 games. I'd actually be shocked if they didn't win 9 games. I legitimately tell you, I'd be shocked if they didn't win 9 games. The USC thing is interesting. I love the idea of it because it's ludicrous, right? The idea that we'd be comparing 2 programs thousands of miles apart in separate conferences because fans are upset.
They have no ties whatsoever.
No ties besides the head coach and the coaching staff went over there. Okay. This schedule now, I'm looking at USC schedule now. They have a couple tricky games. This team probably should go 6-0 to start off the season. Rice at Stanford, which has been tricky, but that Stanford team is not Stanford. Fresno at home, at Oregon State. Jonathan Smith's done a really good job, but USC should be more talented, so we'll see what happens there. ASU is a train wreck of a program right now. They have them at home. Then they have Washington State before their schedule. It gets a little bit more challenging. I look at their schedule right now. 9-3 is what I'm looking at their schedule right now. That's what I see. I think that's also worst case scenario for them. The amount of talent they've hooked in. There is some parts on that team, guys, that if we put them up against, like when they play Utah, right? Utah might dismantle them because they're a much better, more well-rounded team with better parts on things like the defensive line and places like that.
Right.
When they play against, Fresno and at Stanford, who sucked last year, and Washington State, who's obviously in transition right now, and Arizona, who's in transition right now, and Cal and Colorado, they're probably going to blow those teams off the map just by pure talent alone. So do not pay attention, folks, to what's happening out there. Mind your own business, OU fans, because you might have a very successful season ahead of you.
That's a failed mission. Telling OU fans to not pay attention to that, it's a failed mission. I think they think more about USC more than their own program sometimes. They care so much about it. I've never seen a fan base hate someone more than OU fans to Lincoln Riley. It is truly insane. And I think it will be unevenly or unfairly compared between the two. But
it does have some pressure there, though. Although I think it's dumb pressure. But I think he's equipped to handle it. I'm actually not too worried about him.
Here's a question too before we this might get us off the rails, but what do you think is the ceiling for this Oklahoma team? Do you think a ceiling is college football playoff? Because for me, I just don't see it. I was listening to the Oklahoma Breakdown, which is Gabe Eicher and Teddy Lehman's podcast, and Teddy Lehman said that the wide receiver core is better this year and the running back core is better this year. And I was like, what are you I understand that you love your team, but your wide receiver room did not get better. You did not.
I mean, if the guys perform, here's the thing. I think Jeff Levy's offense can do a whole lot of good for these guys. I know we all love Lincoln Riley, whatever, but I think Jeff Levy has a tried and true system that has not just worked for him. It's worked for coaches everywhere. Use his system. I know, look, Lincoln Riley too, obviously has roots in a system that's worked everywhere as well. But Jeff Levy is hot right now as we are speaking and gets a quarterback that he knows and gets running back that we think should be better than Eric Gray. And they've got some nice wide receivers, sure. Robbie, what I'll tell you is when we think about when you think their ceiling's college football playoff, right? We think oh my God, I'm stacking them up against, Ohio State, Alabama. What you really have to do is just think about their schedule. Who is the most difficult team that Oklahoma is going to play this year? The most difficult team they could possibly play is the best version of Texas, the best version of Baylor, best version of Oklahoma State, which are all very scary teams. But are they Alabama? Are they Georgia? Are they peak performance Notre Dame or whatever else, whatever every team you want to pick? No, but like, could they make it? Yeah. I mean, this team could go 12-1 and go to the college football playoff because of their schedule, not being insanely difficult. Do I think they get tripped up? Sure. But like, could they arrive at 12-1? Yeah. I mean, if I'm taking the over if I think they win at least 9 games, all they have to do is just get the 2 more, and two's small margins. But like, look, they could rip off 6 straight wins to start the year. That could happen. If you're 6-0, you can drop one on the back end, and then you could lose on Thursday night to Iowa State on the road. Whatever it is, and then go to the Big 12 championship, win it 12-1. See how things shake out and still make it. So I would say, I mean, can they make it? Yeah. I mean, would they be the worst team there? Probably. Sure. Yeah.
Oh, I think like people think this is like a shtick that I just don't like Oklahoma, and sometimes that can be true. But for here, it's just for what they lost defensively and offensively, and they gained Dylan Gabriel and some other pieces and a good staff. I just don't know how this talent compares to any other top tier in the country. I think it's just
the good news is they don't have to play them.
Yeah, but it's just like, oh, it's Oklahoma and that's history. I understand, but I think a lot of the rest of the league is kind of catching up.
That's fair. That's very fair. Number 4, we'll hit that in 1 second. First, quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. Go to built.com today. That is built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15, LOCKED15, LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com today. They have Built Puffs. They have Built Go. They have Built Boost. All those things are good and good for you. Go to built.com today. Promo code LOCK15 for 15% off. All right, number 4. So I'm not sure where you went here. I went with Dave Aranda. Are you okay? So
yep,
we've had 4 different types of success. This is now victim of your own success pressure, right? This is okay. We've completely forgotten that the year 2020 happened. We're all so focused on 2021. Robbie, I think there's a lot of pressure here because of how well they did last year. I think Baylor can be consistently a top team in the current Big 12 and the new Big 12. The reason why? We've seen a variety of coaches go to Baylor and compete and win championships, right? We saw Art Briles do it. Not a good guy, but I'm just saying in the football sense, right?
Right.
We saw Matt Rule do it. We've now seen Dave Aranda do it. This is a place where you can go and win. The problem is Dave Aranda has now set his bar very high. What I will say is he's a really thoughtful guy, and what he did, I liked a lot. He acknowledged his offense has to get better, right? This defense this year is not going to be able to support an offense with the way it played last season, in my opinion. I might be wrong on that, but I think that's the way it plays out. He knew they had to get better at the quarterback spot, so he makes the move to Blake Shapen. We'll see what happens at the running back spot. We'll see what happens at wide receiver spot. They've got some stuff to replace on defense, but should have a pretty decent defensive line, and they should have a good offensive line, which are 2 good bedrocks. But there's a lot of people who think Baylor is going to be Baylor from last year, and they're not. And so that is why there's a lot of pressure, I feel like, on Dave Aranda. If he goes 8-4, they win 9 and they win the bowl game, whatever, they go 8-5. It's fine. It's okay. It's a step back. It's not too, they should have a step back. But still, it's like there seems like there's a lot of buzz, and I think people would be upset if they went 8-4. Not mad at Dave Aranda. They'd be like, oh, it's fine, but I was kind of hoping for more. I just think there's a lot of pressure there this year.
Oh, 100%. And we see this in college football, especially in the Big 12, where it seems like besides Oklahoma or Texas, if you're a team besides that, you have 1 year out of basically every 4 years where you can actually compete for the Big 12 championship. And Baylor has shown that in the last 3 Big 12 championships, they've gone twice. They have cemented themselves in the conference. Like, you know what? We can compete for Big 12 championships every year. They need to keep that ball rolling because, like, Dave Aranda, we all think he's a fantastic coach. This is where he really proves it. If he can sustain what he is doing, then we can actually say, you know what? When OU and Texas leave, they are the program. Like, they are the program in the conference that can win every single year. And I think the pressure is very high this year because they are losing a lot of talent. And also when it comes to their schedule, I'm not too. It's a very, very tricky schedule for them. I'm not going to lie here, and So the pressure for that is like immense. And I do love Dave Aranda and everything he's done. I think if anyone who's been following what I've been saying, I very much am pro Baylor Bear.
Right.
I love Baylor very much. But yeah, the real pressure here is, can you keep this thing going? And honestly, I do think they can. So it is really, can you cement yourself as a true player, consistent player that you can see every year in college football?
This might be a team that wins 8 games that is like a better than an 8-win team, right? I mean, because we talk about the schedule, they have road game. Or they, first of all, their second game of the year is in Provo, which is really exciting and interesting to me. They've got a game on the road against Iowa State. They get Oklahoma State at home, which is nice. They have to go to Morgantown. They have to go to Lubbock. They have to go to OU. They have to go to Texas. So there is a very difficult schedule here. Do I think they're top half of the league? Of course I do. Do I think there's a little bit of attrition, kind of almost a revamp for the following season? Yeah, I think they're going to be ripping and ready to go when it comes to 2023. And I think maybe a small step back to get there in 2022, but nothing substantial. If they won 9 games, I would not be surprised at all. 5. This is where things get interesting because the pressure takes different kind of forms. At 5, I've got Chris Klieman. All right. I have Kansas State.
I did not have him.
And here is why. All right. So Kansas State football, to make their big runs, is usually dependent on a group of players coalescing and getting to a certain point, right? You need a group of guys that you've had for a while to get to a certain point where it's like, all right, this could work. And we can rip some wins off. This group has it. They've got their star running back. They have got their group of wide receivers and tight ends back. We'll see how the offensive line does. We'll see how the defense does. And I think this team, because they can choke the life out of games, can make things a bit harder. They have to make life a little bit more difficult, though, I think, on the defensive end. That's one thing they have to do this year. But if there's any team that might be able to play Kansas State football, I think it's this group. So, Robbie, what I'm really trying to say here is, like, if they don't make it happen this year, it's going to keep being 7-8 wins at most, I feel like. And so I think there's some pressure. Hey, can you get this group to a higher spot? Because right now this feels like the group that's got a chance to do it out of all the recent groups, because they have a quarterback that we think has got some ability, think we got some talent. And once again, the running back we know is really good. Wide receivers really good. Tight ends we know they're good. This group has a chance, in my opinion. Also, an elite edge rusher as well on the defensive side too, which will really help some things. So I think this group in particular with Colin Klein, that's a guy who was a part of a team that made a big run. I think the pressure should be on here because this could be a really good year for them. And there's not too many years they climb that ladder. And I think this could be a ladder climbing year for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had him lower on my list, but I think for different reasons. The reason I have him lower is I think if he gets 8 wins or if he gets 7 wins, I don't think he's worried. I don't think his job security is.
There's no pressure in my opinion. But
yeah. So when it comes to that, job pressure, I don't think is a thing. And also when it comes to Kansas State culture, I think just seeing how he works, I think he is the perfect coach to replace, Bill Snyder. I think that is definitely a thing. Recruiting rankings, obviously, could be much better for Kansas State. I think they have a massive like depth issue where it comes to like talent. Like they have stars, but if those stars are out, oh my God, like it's not very good for them. So I'm high on this Kansas State team this year. They are definitely a team that had just been in the upper to middle of the pack of the Big 12. I don't think they we've talked about this before, but they've never really like pushed to like we can actually consider them a top 4, top 3 team in the league. So the pressure is just to actually cement yourself for that. But most of the pressure should be you have Deuce Vaughn and you may not know if you're going to have him again. Like this may be your last year to do him because he is an NFL player. Whether you want to complain about his size or anything like that, he can make those plays in the NFL, and I could definitely see him being a day 2 type of pick. So the pressure is on this year for him to actually capitalize on that because I don't know if they're necessarily going to have a better roster moving forward. And when it comes to their record, I think some of the games are actually in their favor. They have Texas at home and Oklahoma State at home. They have OU and Baylor on the road, but this is a chance to actually, take advantage. And then they actually, even though Missouri, I'm going to default to you on Missouri football, but they could start the season 3-0, South Dakota, Missouri, and Tulane. And then you start conference play at Oklahoma, which they've shown that they can actually beat. So I think they need a very positive start to the season. But
I think they definitely get it too. I think they played Mizzou at home as well, which is going to be pretty big for them. I think that one's at home. All right, I'm going to give you my 6 through 10, and we can just kind of discuss these as a group because like this is the small pressure club. First, quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline and BetOnline.net. You guys go to BetOnline and BetOnline.net today. You guys can bet on the over/under win totals for the Big 12 in the year 2022. Some tasty lines there. I've already hit those. You guys should hit them as well. Kansas over, Oklahoma over, Robbie. Tickets are punched and in. They can be for you too at BetOnline and BetOnline.net. It's where the game starts. All right. 6 through 10, I've got Matt Campbell. I've got Sonny Dykes. I've got Mike Gundy. I've got Lance Leipold. I've got Joey McGuire. I'm going to work backwards to forwards here. So I have McGuire at 10 because their recruiting is so damn good. I mean, obviously they can't go 2-10 this year. I don't think they will.
Right.
I think they do have some ability at the running back spot. At the quarterback spot, we definitely know they have some ability. The question is for them, they need to find some wideouts because their offense does require them to have really good wide receivers. That's part of it. So I think maybe there's a processing year and then they get the athletes, the kind of guys that they want. Because Zach Kitley, what he's done is build an offense around undervalued guys. And that's what he can do, especially there at Texas Tech. And Joey McGuire's done a great job on the trail. I think they're fine. Lance Leipold at 9. Only reason he's not at 10 is like, I think there's a little bit of momentum towards, can we get to 3? Can we do 3 or 4? And look, it's just, if they don't get there, it's just going to be oh man, but not like damn it.
Exactly.
Dude, we're not mad at you. So that's why I have him at 9. All right. Gundy at 8, like, they should win some, yes. But, I think Josh Pate, I'm not sure if you saw Josh Pate's video the other day about Oklahoma State and how just they're a modern marvel in college football with a machine they built kind of, the southern part of the United States, Iowa in a lot of ways, right, with how consistent they are. And then Sonny Dykes at 7. I think people want to see him win some, but it's not that big. And then I've got Matt Campbell at 6 because it's supposed to be a step back, but still, he's a good enough coach to where we think they should be winning 7 games probably every single year now. So what do you think about my 6 through 10 there?
I think it's good. The one that I had much, much higher, I had Matt Campbell as my number 3. I think I swapped him in Venables because it's just like, I'm so confused by him. And like I've ranted on Iowa State on here before, but if Matt Campbell comes out and like there's this mystique around him all the time, like when people are talking about the betting odds, they're like, well, Iowa State 6.5, but I'm going to go over because, not because of facts, not because, returning talent, not because of anything, but because Matt Campbell is a great coach. If Matt Campbell gets 5 wins this year, that mystique needs to go away. Because I believe he is a great coach, but we can't just be saying, oh, Matt Campbell mystique for a while, because there are facts. They are losing so much of their talent. In the SP rankings, they're 128th out of the entire FBS when it comes to returning talent. That is not a number you want to be. 128? Are you kidding me? And when it comes like, Iowa State's going to be good. There's a lot of pressure this year for Matt Campbell. And when it comes to a media aspect of things, he is so guarded when it comes to like his team. And even when it comes to their own spring game, the chance for the fans to go and actually learn who is part of their teams, he doesn't do a spring game. He does these scrimmages at other high schools around the state of Iowa.
And Arizona.
So a lot of people don't even know who is exactly on this team, what their depth is. And if it comes out and we realize, oh, the people who have been waiting behind these others aren't even that good. It's like, I believe he builds from within and I trust him with that. But I'm very skeptical on that. And then also just from a pure, hey, I think I've reached my ceiling here at Iowa State thing. If you get 5 wins this year, why would Michigan want to call you and offer you big money?
Not just Michigan, Robbie, your Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
Offered him. They picked a different Campbell instead. I will say this though, Robbie. He first year Iowa State 16, right? 3-9. Since then, the records, man. 8-5, 8-5, 7-6, 9-3, 7-6. So he's hitting that over. I mean, 6.5, he's hitting the over. And I understand what you're saying. Like like, yes, there's not too far of a jump from 7-6 to 5-7, right? Like 7-5 instead of 5-7, right? There is not some chasm between that. That's a couple games. It's really not that huge of a couple games don't go your way, whatever, right?
Also, can you beat Iowa? Can you just do this already, Matt
I don't
Campbell?
think this year's going to be the year they beat Iowa. Well, actually, I think I mentioned this. Would this not be the most Matt Campbell year ever to beat Iowa on the road after your amazing team last year was at home and didn't get the job done, and honestly got their asses kicked because your offense kept turning the ball and your defense was gangbusters. Your offense just couldn't do crap the entire game. I will say retaining guys like Will McDonald and Xavier Hutchinson. I know it's only 2 players and there's 11 on the field at once. It's good to have. It's really good to have. We'll see what happens. But they did lose so much off that last year's team. I just think when you go to a place like Iowa State, right? And there's, I'm looking at the records of, let's see, So during Paul Rhodes' time at Iowa State, 3 seasons with at least 6 wins. Most he ever did was 7, right? Gene Chizik before that, 4-3-2. Before that, Dan McCarney, 7-7, 7-7. Did have a 9 in there. All right. So like you're just seeing it's really hard to do this at Iowa State. So taking a step back is okay. Right. I just don't think it's going to be as pronounced because like this guy knows how to build foundations and build teams. And he's got a couple players that we know are all conference caliber players left. So I know what you're saying. I know it's like, we're just saying the coach doesn't play the games, right? We can't just say it's Matt Campbell, but like, until he gives me a reason to pick the under, I'm going to take him over, over West Virginia this year. I think right now Iowa State wins more games than West Virginia. Why? Because I think their coach is in a better spot.
Yeah. Another one I had on the list too, I had Sonny Dykes at number 5 just because he's replacing such a legend. I think that comes with its own territory, and I do believe in him, but it's like you're replacing someone that is TCU. Like I would hate to be the coach that replaces Nick Saban, Gary Patterson, and Alabama. They're not the same type of, so comparing it is a little different, but it's just replacing that. There's a lot of, okay, what exactly are you doing? Especially when it's such a stark change from this. We are known for defense and now we are transitioning into offense. Like we're going 0 to 100 on that. So there's a lot of pressure with that. Mike Gundy, I necessarily don't think there's a lot of pressure. I just think, do you? Like, I think this is a team that's going to be in the top 4. And if they end up being 7-5, well, they lost a lot of talent, but they also, they don't do that. So I'm not necessarily like they're a team that is usually consistently always at the top. But yeah, I had Lance Leipold at the bottom too. I feel like any Kansas fan, if they get 2 wins, it's like, all right, well, he's got to work. He's got to get better. It's like this team is, we'll get better. But if he gets 3 wins, like people are drunk in the streets. They are so rich and wealthy.
Also, if they could rip one off of OU, because here's the thing we forget. Like they almost got OU and Texas in the same season, and he didn't even have an off season.
Well, let me look at their schedule real quick, and I will pick the wins that they have. Okay.
Oh, I know so I've already been on those, Robbie. The wins I got Tennessee Tech as a win. Right. They got to beat Duke, and if they do that, all they need is 1 conference game.
Yeah.
If they can pull 1 conference game off, that'll put them at 3 wins if you beat Tennessee Tech and Duke.
Yeah. So the sure wins I have on this is Tennessee Tech, Texas, and Duke. You can pencil those in.
That's the one thing I said. We went over the schedule the other night, Robbie. I did mention, I was like, look, there's a situation if things have gone completely sideways in Texas, that late season game against Kansas could be either one where they take all their frustration out or one where it's over for Steve Sarkisian. It's been a total disaster and they lose. I don't think that happens. I just want to make a quick point on Mike Gundy. Also too, I think the one reason last year why I really kind of came around on him, because I was low on him after that 2020 season. I know the COVID and everything, but that team should have been better. I love the way that he adapted last year and was like, this team should run and play defense. And they ran and played defense and they did it all the way. And they were just feet away from a Big 12 championship win. So I love the fact that he kind of evolved. And also there was some personal evolving that happened, I think, for him over the last couple of years that we hope happened. All right, Robbie, anything else before we get out of here?
No, this is it. I'm excited for this upcoming season, and I'm looking at you, Steve Sarkisian. Josh and I have been talking a lot of good things about you, a lot of good things about this Texas team. Do not let us down, okay? There's a lot of people in these comment sections, a lot of people that want you to fail, okay?
The number of people I counted 14 in 3 days. People were like, Texas is back. Somebody even said, when's Josh can get the Texas flag on the wall? So yes.
Yeah,
we hear you is what you're saying, right, Robbie? We hear you.
Yes, we hear you, but this has to, like I was gonna say this with Steve Sarkisian, but like this is the year where if you want to say Oklahoma is down, and if you want to say Baylor and Oklahoma State are down because of the talent they lost, and you lost 0 NFL players because none of them really got drafted, so you lost Cameron Dicker. Okay, right. But this is the year where you feel like you are rising while the other teams are a little bit down. So this is now time to strike, Texas Longhorns. Ha ha ha.
Robbie, where can people find you and also your work as well?
You can follow me on Twitter at the Triano Kid. You can listen to SiriusXM Big 12 radio throughout the next month. We are on 7 to 10 a.m. Central. So when you're done listening to this, go over to there as we preview for the upcoming season.
All right, Robbie, as always, man, appreciate your time.
Thank you.